Model A engine coming soon.
How is the engine rebuild going?
So, was the engine redone?
What is the status of your engine rebuild?
Nothing about your Model A? What's going on?
Thank you, how's your engine going on? Regards, Richard!
How is the engine debuff going in?
Just converted to an electric engine. Duh. I think it is time for me to tell you a story. Okay, let's see if I can get everything straight. Quite a lot has happened, or nothing has happened, see it as you wish. Today is June 2nd, 2023, and my engine died on June 6th, 2022. It's almost a year, and I'm going to brief you about what happened in that year. Initially, I was very motivated to get this over as quickly as possible because I myself thought it's really no biggie to, get the block back in shape. I took it out of the car and hauled it down to an engine builder about 200 kilometers from here. Talked to him and, he set everything up, told me what he was going to do with it and so on and so forth, got all the parts here. And then I got told through other old-timer enthusiasts that the guy I brought my engine to is a fraud. Many people had heard that he took engines and kept them for years and years on end. He would write up a lot more hours than he actually put into it, and sometimes spare parts got lost somehow and were put onto the receipt later on. Since I didn't want to pay this guy 20,000 euros to get my engine done in 5 years, I took everything back and searched for a different engine builder. And I found one. This was in September 2022. He told me, yeah, it would be absolutely no problem, bring the stuff over, it would be between 1,000 and 1,500 euros, and it would take 4 to 5 weeks. Fair enough. I brought all my stuff there. It looked like a rather professional shop with several people working there, and with big machinery and a proper building, not some shade tree mechanic, behind the house sort of stuff, so I trusted them. And after 5 weeks I called him and asked what was going on, and he said, well, yeah, we've pretty much got everything to get started. 4 to 5 weeks from now the thing will be done. 4 to 5 weeks pass and he quotes me another 4 to 5 weeks. This is now approaching December, and he said, but no worries, it'll be done by the end of the year, no doubt about it. About 2 weeks in, he calls me again and says, no, we are not going to make it, people are sick, others are on vacation and so on and so forth. We can't do it this year, but January most definitely. Again, some time passes, I call him, he calls me, and it keeps being delayed and being told, well, another 4 to 5 weeks and then the engine will be collectible. At some point, we are actually getting close to something happening, because I was kind of fed up with him and I decided to pick everything back up and do it myself. I had a CAD model ready for basically a frame to bolt onto the block and then do the whole main bearing spindle operation by myself on a big lathe with brass bushings as a guide for the boring bar, like you would see on the typical Babbitt machine jigs. So I call him and ask him how far he's been, expecting that he's not done anything, and then he tells me, well, the main bearings are finished, all that's left now is hone out, bore and hone the cylinders, lap the valve seats and go over the deck of the thing. That of course changed everything for me, because now it's not feasible for me to collect everything. I cannot do much besides lap the valve seats. I can't bore out the cylinders. Honing is another completely different topic. And so I decide, alright, it's not going to take too long for him, right? So let him do the job and let him finish it. And then I get a call. We screwed up.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
Somehow the rear main bearing block is out of spec, and we'll need to send it away to have it plasma coated to, get it back into spec. And this is where I slowly start getting a little tingly, because we're approaching May, and through the month of May I wanted to spend my time in Stuttgart, and I can't just take my parents' car away for a month just to get there and back and, leave them without a car. So I tell him, get your shit together, I need the car. And he says, no problem, the guy is, you can depend on him. Turns out you can't, because the owner of the plasma coating shop was on vacation, and seemingly nobody else was able to do any plasma coating in the meantime. So it kept being delayed, and I called back and forth, and he says, yeah, it'll be another 2-3 days, and yeah, by the end of the week we're done, and no, it's going to be next week, but trust me, 2 more days, and so on and so forth. And that's the point at which I stopped shaving, just to illustrate the point of a 3-day beard from a engine builder perspective. Well, you guessed it. We didn't make it until my month in Stuttgart. I got a car organized, don't ask me how. However, about, shall we say, 4 days before deadline, he calls me and says, we cracked a bearing block. Turns out what happened is the crankshaft which I ordered, the Burlington crank with the counterweights, wasn't finished entirely. The rear oil slinger wasn't machined. So it was, too close to fit into the oil retaining grooves in the bearing block, and the engine builder just tightened and kept tightening until I had a nice big crack in the bearing block. At this point my whole schedule is in tatters, and all I could do was organize a new bearing block for him to machine out, hoping it would be the time that it takes while I am away in Stuttgart for him to finally finish my block. I get back from Stuttgart, nothing happened. The block is in exactly the state that I left it at when I spent a month in Stuttgart. He didn't do shit. And a couple of ugly telephone calls later, we are now at a point where he says, today is the day I can go pick it up. So I can now haul my ass over there, get the block, and then, since I have no trust in this guy left whatsoever, I'm going to bring it to work and see if I can at least replicate the measurements that he allegedly made the block to, see that everything is in spec, and now assemble everything with great care and slowly, pedantically, so nothing will happen to this thing. Because on June 11th, in 10 days, I will be departing to a 2-week vacation in Bavaria, which I'm going to do with a couple of old-timer friends. And you can imagine that the engine needs to be top fit for it, and I have to somehow get it run in rudimentarily, and I'm going to have to go for TÜV. The 2-year cycle of inspection is due since October. Without further ado, let's jump into this video. I've talked way too much, so let's go! You know what, this is already too long of a video and I don't want to split it into two parts, so I'm just going to escalate completely. I'm going to go through this step by step, more or less, and I'm going to start by telling you that I hadn't anticipated how bad the paint job on this engine is. Obviously they used some kind of chemical to clean the block out, and that just wiped out the paint in itself. I didn't want to repaint the block, but it looks like I have to. The thing is, I don't have any paint, and the time is ticking. I don't have the time to wait and order some paint and then paint it. So, as much as I hate doing that, I'm going to assemble it the way it is now and paint it when it is in the car. Not optimal, but if I get some good paint, that ought to do the job just fine. Needless to say, I'm going to have to do some cleaning on the inside as well. And right now, this is only here temporarily. Tomorrow, I'm going to drive off and measure everything that the guy did for me, because after a year of waiting, I don't have that much trust left in him. So I want to make sure everything is tip-top before I assemble everything and discover it's not. Here's a good one. There are punch marks number 1 and number 2. He marked this one number 1 and this one number 2. So I'm just going to do punch marks. Alright, that's that. Now of course I can show you the inserts. This is what they look like. You can see they've cut a notch into here to accommodate the notch in the bearing half. And I'm obviously going to take everything apart, clean it out. Then I will of course clean out the junk in the block, and that's for now all I'm going to do to the block. Let's take a look below the rear main bearing, and that's the part which I think was very badly described in the instructions and only became evident through looking at pictures online. You have to order 3 halves of a thrust washer, and then 1 gets put on the inside and 2 are going on the outside. 1 in this half and 1 in that half. This of course means that the recess for such a thrust washer has to be cut all the way around on the rear and only machined into the block in the front. Now in the front you want to have the... Yikes! Scheiß die Wand an, Alter! Das kann man... Oh! Do not drop precision items, you fool. Mann! This means that this side is locked against rotation by the bearing block, the other side isn't. And in order to keep these from rotating, the kit comes with a screw. And what you do now is take a look in here and notice that there are notches cut into here from, when this thing was machined way back when, in order to have the babbitt stick to the block better. What you do now is drill and tap a hole into the thrust washer in the very position that this is supposed to sit in, and that's going to, the screw head is going to locate in this notch, and that makes it stop from rotating while still allowing a little bit of wiggle room for it to seat against the crankshaft without binding. Incidentally, this screw is US, I don't have a tab for it, and the head is the wrong size too, so I'm going to metrify this thing.
Stop it. Get some help.
Gotta give it to you, Yanks. This bronze you've been using, yep, that's some good shit.
Yep, that's good shit.
Click. There we go. Now as you can see, there is a slight little bit of wiggle room, and that's exactly what we want. Great! Remember last episode where I weighed out the conrods and balanced them against each other? In the meantime, we also checked that the bore diameter was on spec, and now we can continue by weighing out the piston and wrist pin assembly and facing off a little bit off each piston to get them within a gram of each other. As mentioned before, I now took the block to work. We put it onto our 3D measuring machine and checked the dimensions of the main bearings, checked the dimension of the cylinder bores, and checked the position of the crankshaft axis relative to the camshaft and the cylinder bore. Well, we're back from measuring, and it doesn't look too bad. The dimensions themselves are spot on. The only thing I would have to moan about is that the distance from the center axis of the crank to the center axis of the cam and the center axes of all the pistons, or cylinders rather, is not constant. So in other words, the axes are not entirely parallel. We're talking about, I think, barely 0.3 of a millimeter along the entire length, and the play between the position right here where it matters the most, where the gears mesh, is in spec, so I'm not going to complain, but much rather start assembly. However, maybe you've noticed something, maybe you haven't. Maybe you'll notice now that while over here the oil grooves meet up, they've made something wrong in here. So I'm going to pop out the shell in here and remake the cut slot here so that I can turn the shell around. Did I mention I have a new vise? Well, it's a new old vise, but it's a good one. You see this tag right here, it says Hoyer on here, and that's a patent for a vise where both jaws are made out of entirely one piece. So this is drop forged all in one, where most cheaper vices would be welded right in the seam where, well, the stress is the most. And therefore, you know, if you'd lean on it with your body weight, then after 1,000 years maybe they might start breaking. This one won't do that.
walked out. Now you know that ain't right. Well, he'd better watch out if I meet him tonight. I said when I get low, oh, I get high. All this hard luck in this town has found me. Nobody knows how trouble goes round and round me. Oh, I'm all alone with no one to pet me. But old rocking chair ain't never gonna get me. 'Cause when I get low, oh, I get high.
Alright, everything is finally torqued down, and as you can see, the crankshaft spins smoothly as butter, which is nice. I've checked the end play, and we can now proceed with the next step, which I'm not quite sure what I'll do. Now the rings, there are 3 different types. The top ring is just a ring, there's nothing special to it. Some of these have a chamfer on one side on the inside, which is supposed to help the combustion gases get in between and push the ring outwards against the cylinder wall. The second ring is a little bit more interesting. There is 2 different types. Number 1 is a stepped one, which looks like this. And the other type is a so-called nose minute ring. At least that's the literal translation from German. That's because when you look at these in profile, and you'll notice that they are not a right angle. Can you see that the right side is actually drooping off in that direction a little bit? And that taper is so small that it's not measured in degrees, but much rather in minutes. And that's why the nose is a minute nose. It also has the set chamfer on the inside, which is supposed to help the combustion gases expand the ring. These can be installed the wrong way around, obviously, because the nose has to face down in order to scrape the oil off the cylinder wall and down into the crankcase. If you switch this upside down, then all that's going to happen is you're going to create yourself a nice little oil pump, which is going to let oil past it and then scrape it up into the combustion chamber. That is why they've got a little dimple drilled into the side, which is supposed to be top. The third ring is another oil control ring. It's made up of 3 different parts. This is basically what the ring looks like on the top and bottom. And then there is this mesh or web going in between it, which is just supposed to help contain the oil in here. And it's going to pass the oil in through several holes in the piston, down onto the wrist pin, back into the crankcase. These all need different gaps, and I've written these down in metric because I can't do inches. As you may see, the gap gets less from the bottom to the top. That's a very simple explanation. The top ring is the one which is closest to the combustion, therefore it gets the hottest and expands the most. If it expands so much that the ends start contacting each other, it's going to bind up in the cylinder and just score the walls. You don't want that. So top ring gap is the most, bottom ring gap is the least.
Hello kids, my name is Karl F.W. Borgward, as you can tell.
You know this guy, I don't. He came just in time to help me space the ring gaps out. And that's basically what we're going to do until late in the night.
Oh dear. We have lots of beer at hand, thanks to Kloster Andex.
And we've got 4 cylinders and 3 rings per cylinder.
Oh dear.
Cheers.
to the very end. But you ran away the first rainy day, just a fair weather friend. I had a heart I gave you, but you had one to lend. For when skies were black, you took it right back, just a fair weather friend. Foolish me, I couldn't see the handwriting on the wall. Sunny skies had dimmed my eyes, I never thought that rain would fall. Just when I needed someone on whom I could depend, you walked out on me, what else can you be? Just a fair weather friend.
It's 2:45. There's no one in the place except you and me. So set 'em up, Joe. I got a little story I think you should know. We're drinking, my friend, to the end of a brief episode. So make it one for my engine, for your engine, and one more for the road.
Day 2 started out wonderfully. I had planned to install the lifters, but the lifters had other plans. Turns out, despite ordering 8 standard tappets, I got 1 standard and 7 oversized 0.5 millimeter.
Ist größer.
Completely unwilling to delay the engine assembly yet again, I chucked all the 7 tappets in the lathe and machined them down so they would fit.
And now they're nice snug fit in here without binding. So now the camshaft can get its new gear, get installed, and then we're going to flip it on the side and install the valves and springs. With the valve lash set, it is now springtime.
Wunderbar.
Deutschland!
Got you on my mind. Don't care to step out. I'm easy to find when you're not about. Just staying at home, happy to be by myself. I've got to knock wood. I've always been true. So nice to be good for someone like you. I'm staying at home, happy to be on the shelf. A cozy chair for solitaire, perhaps a book or two. When things are slow, the radio, how can I be blue? There's plenty to do, so much to think of. There's heaven in view, for it's really love. I'm staying at home, happy to be by myself.
Nice. Gut. Feierabend. I had initially intended to run the engine in through an electric motor and a belt. Ford did the same thing with their engines at the plant. However, when I tried to hook up the electric motor, the belt would slip, and if we forced it to grip, then the motor would stall. So I didn't really have any alternative but to do it the regular way and do the first start with gasoline power.
Ja, ja, kommt.
Okay, super. Das hat einfallen lassen. Gehört erschossen. Klick.
Sie in einem Krankenhaus in Chemnitz anfangen. Schon das Einstiegsgehalt ist 4-mal so hoch wie das, was sie jetzt in Rio verdient. Unternehmen aus besonders entwickelten
Ah, jetzt ist das natürlich. Ah ne, das kann man auch. Ne, kann man nicht. Kann man doch, kann man nicht. Och! Ford Engineering. So, I've had a talk with Alexis K from YouTube, and he told me that the distributor can be advanced 40 degrees on a Model A. Meanwhile, the maximum you should give the insert bearings are 29. So now I'm not timing by setting the pin to top dead center, but I've marked me top dead center right here by laying a flat iron on here. And now I can rotate the engine 30 degrees, 28, and turning it that far will then give me the point at which to adjust the points to open with the ignition fully advanced. Is that clear or what? Ja, ist total verrostet. Kommt was? Gott sei Dank. Wenn es anfangen sollte zu brennen, ich gebe dir das Blech, das schmeißt du über die Flammen, ja?
Zu brennen?
Ja, wenn der Auspuff ist direkt neben dem Vergaser.
Ah. Was soll ich dann machen?
Das Blech da drunter, dass du die Flammen damit erstickst. Dann mache ich den Benzinhahn zu.
Moment.
Vollgas.
Moment. Wenn es brennt,
Ja.
brennt's wo?
Da, wo es jetzt runtertropft.
Ja. Und dann, das mache ich dann da drüber.
Da schmeißt du das Blech drüber, in der Hoffnung, dass es am Boden brennt. So. After that very, very promising first start, we let the engine come up to somewhat operating temperature to allow the gasket to seat, and after a minute or so shut it back off again and repeated that process 2 or 3 more times during the day to be able to retorque the head gasket bolts.
At twilight, dear, I love to have you near, to whisper in my ear of love you grand thing, you fine thing, I love you. Your smiling face, the sun cannot erase. That perfect fond embrace at twilight. When the sun starts sinking, I start thinking of you, yeah, babes. When the stars begin to shine, you know what's happening. I'm pining and longing for you. At twilight, dear, when birds have stopped their song, I hope you'll come traipsing along at twilight, in the cool of the evening when everything begins. Baby, I'll be waiting.
Bright and early the next morning, while filling the car up with coolant and retightening the cylinder head bolts, still in my pajamas, I discovered that the water outlet had cracked. Scheiße. So it appears that this thing was broken for a longer amount of time, as you can see by the rust on here. And tightening it one final time gave it the rest. I need to proceed. So I'm going to glue this back together, get the heap running, and bother for a replacement later on. So the JB weld repair didn't last a second. However, it is now watertight. So I'm now crossing my fingers, let the engine warm up, and drive my ass down there to get tech inspected. And of course do the first drive in 1 year, exactly. Richard is optimistic. Sieht gut aus, ja. Waterneck is leak-proof so far. It's not dripping oil anywhere. And the idle is of course a little high still, because we're still in run-in. But overall, she's doing mighty fine. Shortly after we arrived for tech inspection, here the usual testing is done. Lights, brakes, horn. The brakes actually needed a little bit of adjustment. But during the visual checkup, the inspector actually noticed that we had bolted up a ball joint the wrong way. I mean, odds are it was probably past midnight when we bolted that thing together, so we didn't notice it. I'm glad the inspector noticed, and it was a quick fix to do this right away. A few checks later, I got my fresh badge and was right on my merry way to hit the road again. Well, that was a fun little weekend, wasn't it? Well, 4 days actually. The engine runs nicely as far as I can tell. It doesn't knock, it responds perfectly, and you can feel that it is willing to do more than I ask of it right now. I'm keeping it very gentle at the moment. I'm avoiding speeds above 40 miles an hour. I try not to go too steep of a hill. You know, if it ends up being a steep hill, then I'm trying to avoid those low RPM lugging moments which you tend to experience when you just keep it in third gear. You know, then I just switch down to second and then creep my way along slowly and steadily. I'm going to do 200 more kilometers because I've already got 100 on the clock. After 300 kilometers I can change the oil that is in it right now, which is a special run-in oil, and once that is out I can change to regular oil. I'm going with 20W40 at the moment. I'm not sure what I'm going to keep. Maybe I'm going to drive 40 in the summer and 30 in the winter. We'll find out about that. I still have to adjust the clutch a little bit. You know, adjusting the fingers seems to have affected the pedal. I'll also have to re-clean the seat of the float needle in the carburetor. You saw that one leaking. Other than that, the car is ready to go on the road. And of course I'll still have to switch out the Waterneck before coming Sunday, which is, well, today is Wednesday. I'm going to depart for 2 weeks of vacation in Bavaria with the car and the orange DKW you saw in the background. And, you know, then it's going to have to perform. So, my apologies for the lack of driving scenes in this video, but you're going to get a lot of that once I'm back from 2 weeks of Bavaria. Hopefully, you know, happily driving along with the freshly rebuilt engine. Thank you for watching this probably way too long video. I just felt it would be best to compress it all into one part. And I hope you enjoyed, and I am happy to be back on the road after pretty much exactly 1 year. 363 days ago it was that my engine decided it needed an overhaul. See you guys. Bye bye. So, Andi, der hier ist für dich. Pröstchen, Pröstchen. Uah. Scheiß Zeug. This episode was sponsored by Prologue.
Mit Prologue ist der Tag im Arsch. So wahr ich Alfred Plörmann heiße. Danke. Das neue Plör schmeckt einfach Scheiße. Genau.